Hi, I'm Dan Weingartz and welcome to Wednesdays with Weingartz. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what you need to do to your mower to get it ready for storage for the winter. The nice thing is there's really only one thing that you have to do in the winter. I, though, like to do the maintenance that you would do in the spring. You can also do in the winter, and it's just as good as doing it next spring. And so the one thing that you have to do in the winter is make sure that you stabilize the fuel. So there'll be different people that say, you know, should you run the fuel out of the mower? Should you put fuel stabilizer in? I would say that either is fine, and then the best possible answer is to add some fuel stabilizer into the fuel and then to run it into the machine, or to run the fuel actually out of the machine. If you put the stabilizer in, and let's say you've got a full tank of gas in the tank, it's only going to take about a shot glass full of fuel stabilizer that'll go into that. But what you want to make sure you do is you do want to make sure that you run the machine for 5 or 10 minutes afterwards to make sure that that gas actually gets into the carburetor. The gas that's in the carburetor is actually what we're concerned about breaking down over the winter and making your machine either difficult to start or not start at all when you need to use it next spring. And so number one thing is add some fuel stabilizer. This is a product called Seafoam. Stable is another that you can put into your fuel and then run it for a few minutes so that you've got that stabilized fuel into the carburetor. If you want to run it all the way out, that works too. It's definitely not going to do any harm to anything, but that's what you need to do to make sure our fuel does break down after about 30 days. And so when you think about storing a mower for 4 or 5 months, we could really have problems if we go to start, because that deterioration process starts at about 30 days. And so we want to make sure we stabilize the fuel. While we're doing that, but we might as well take a look at why don't we just do the maintenance that we're going to need to do next spring anyhow. Nothing that we're going to do is any better next spring than it is if we do it now. And so that would be starting with the oil. And so most mowers, some of them will have an oil plug. Most of them are going to empty right out of the fill tube. And so you're just going to tip, just open up the fill tube and then tip it out into a funnel or into an oil pan, and then just replace that oil. Most mowers, again, it's going to depend. So, check your owner's manual, are going to use about 20 ounces though. So if you get a quart of oil and you notice that you've got leftover, it's not because you didn't put enough into the, if it's measuring correctly, trust the measure on your mower on the dipstick. After that, we're going to change the air filter. This is something that should be done at least once a year as well. You want to change your oil at least once a year, change your air filter at least once a year, and that is just simply taking that air filter out and replacing it with a new one. It's also not every year is it necessary, but it's a good idea to replace a spark plug. And so I would say, again, while you're doing the maintenance, take the spark plug out, put a new spark plug in. If you do it once a year, you for sure won't have any issues with your spark plug falling out. And the last and probably the most important thing is to get underneath the deck and scrape the deck out. I will say this is another job that is a little bit easier to do in the fall than if you wait and do it next spring, because the grass that gets caked up on there will be a little less savory in the spring than it was after it's been sitting for a few months. So going out there now and taking a screwdriver or a flat piece and cleaning out underneath the deck, taking the blade off, getting that sharpened, or you can replace the blade. That's really, that's the basic maintenance that you need to do. So we're going to do, kind of the scrape and sharpening of the blade. We're going to change the air filter and the spark plug, change the oil, and the first thing that we need to make sure that we do in any winterization project is make sure that we stabilize the fuel so that we don't have problems next spring. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today to learn about how to get your mower ready for the winter.